Hello, a very warm welcome on this Monday. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our eighth episode of Arts Canteen and Conversation. I'm delighted tonight to have this distinguished and incredible, amazing, talented artist all the way from Los Angeles. I'm a bit sorry for the delay in the technical issue here. However, it has been a long-awaited conversation to have with the Iranian and multi-instrumental composer and mother and speaker and educator and activist, Azam Ali. A very warm welcome, Azam.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to join you.
It's great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for all the efforts and the help earlier with Loga. He has been amazing.
We should tell people what the last half hour has been like.
It's great.
So basically, we're having some construction done, and one of the workers just knocked the entire cable of the internet. So 1 hour ago, we had no internet, and you kept writing to me, is everything okay? And I just didn't have the heart to tell you that we don't have internet. So we tried to fix
it. We are here now. That's great.
I know. So I'm at my neighbor's house. I have these really nice neighbors. So I came to their garden outside. I'm sitting. I'm connected to their internet.
Please
and
forward our gratitude and thanks all of them on our behalf.
I will. I would not have missed this conversation with you for anything.
Thank you so much, Azam, for joining in. This is really great. So this is our eighth conversation in Arts Canteen, and I am one of those people who has been very lucky to work with Azam in the past, individually and collectively with her band, Niyaz. We hosted a show back in 2012 in London.
Wow.
It was long time ago. We have been trying to work together since then, but unfortunately London always is a little bit of a challenging place to be in. So we met in various festivals around Europe, and hopefully we will be able to bring Azam Ali back to the UK once the circumstances has changed and the COVID pandemic is over, and then we can have an insight of her future projects in a minute. However, I just wanted to remind our audiences in the UK of the last appearance of Azam Ali in London in 2012. So tonight, this is a sincere and straightforward conversation with Azam, who is gifted in too many ways. She is uniquely positioned as an artist, and of course Azam was born in Iran, and she has all of the opportunities in the world to travel around. Her childhood was in India, and then she moved to Canada, and she ended up in Los Angeles as we speak. So, Azam, how all of this journey began?
I'm trying to see how many passports I can collect. I'll go very quickly over the trajectory of my life. So I was born in Iran, and to both the people always wonder because of my last name if I'm Arab or Iranian, but both my parents are Iranian or were Iranian. And when I was 4, my mother sent me to study in India at an English boarding school, and I stayed there for 11 years. Until we came together to the US in 1985. So my mother was trapped in Iran when the revolution happened, and then she came to India to live there for the last 2 years that I was there, but she was not happy in India. So then we came together to the US under political asylum because my mother's side of the family, we are all Baha'is. So at that time, there was, you know, a lot of persecution of the Baha'is. So Canada, US, and Australia were offering asylum to the Baha'is that were trapped outside of Iran. So we came
So there
here.
was a process of facilitating this kind of paperwork and immigration requirement.
Yes, absolutely. But it was so arbitrary. You know, that's the part that is so incredible for me of how I ended up here. I could have, it was just very random whether you got selected to go to Australia, Canada, or the US. So you had no choice in the matter of where you were selected to go. So it was just destiny that brought me to Los Angeles. And the city, you know, I have very mixed feelings about the city, but it's been so good to me in terms of a career, and the US has been very good to me in terms of my career, because as an Iranian, I you know, we are both in the global music scene, so you know, most artists, they find success first within their own countries, and then they sort of become exported outside. But I never had that luxury of becoming, you know, successful in Iran or in India. So I kind of built my career from scratch in the US. And in that sense, I'm very, very grateful to this country. I don't think I could have done it anywhere else when I think about it. And now that I've traveled the whole world and I'm familiar intimately with the music scene and the sort of apparatus of the music business, pretty much in most places in the world, I feel that I could not have done what I do anywhere else. So I'm very grateful for that. And then sort of I found my success here, and then I became an export back to Iran. So it's been a strange sort of wheel, you know, the way that it has. And then when my son was born in 2008, I really needed to get out of the US. You know, it's a place you come to. It's such a young country, and I'm someone who loves history, and I feel I was born in the wrong time. You know, I should have been born in the 1920s and 30s. You know, really, I'm you know, I would have been happy to be immersed in that whole era. But I needed a break, and I knew I wanted to live a more European lifestyle, but Europe was not an option for me anymore because I had spent about 10 years touring in Europe, and I was quite concerned.
It's never been in your radar as a place to settle and just permanently thrive for a few years, or never been that inviting?
Where? You mean Los
In Europe?
Angeles?
No, Europe.
Where was I drawn to go?
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, having grown up in an English boarding school, of course, you know, I grew up with a lot of English literature, and that had a big influence on me. And there is that aspect of English culture that I really love. I find it to be refined, and I was drawn to it, but the weather, not so much. And then I had a deep fascination with France for a long time. You know, I love the language. I learned the language, and I toured for a long time in France. Actually, it was the first country in Europe I became successful in. So while I was touring there, I did consider moving to France, but I felt over the years it became just the xenophobia, racism, just that is a whole different subject that, you know, we can cover if we want to. But I felt that it was not really a place for me. And what I do love about Los Angeles, and when I did move, I mean, that's why I went to Montreal. Montreal was the closest thing I could have to a European lifestyle, but still with all the wonderful trappings of America that I had grown accustomed to. So it was like living in France for 7 years.
Yeah. Were you in the French were you in the Francophone side?
Yes, I actually deliberately chose to go to the Francophone side because I knew that if I would move to the Anglophone side, I would be like a lot of my friends who live in the Anglophone areas, and they never learned French, and they've been there for 20 years. So I knew if I go to the Francophone side, I have to speak French with my neighbors, with the shopkeepers, and so on and so forth. And I really loved it there. What I loved about it is what I also love about Los Angeles, and that is it's a multicultural city. I think once you live in a multicultural city, it's virtually impossible to go back and live somewhere where you are only interacting with a certain sort of demographic. You know, I think you can understand that also really well.
Absolutely. I am always fascinated by this multiculturalism, particularly around certain areas in the United States, because it seems to me it's very diverse and varies from an area to another. But definitely, Los Angeles and California seems like is the ideal place for you to be in at the moment.
Yes, and also the weather is a big thing, you know, and after 7 Canadian winters, you know, it's not just how hard, brutal the winters are, it's the length of the winters. So by the time you're done with winter in Montreal, you know, from one bookend to the other, you're looking at about 6 months of winter, and it crushes the soul. You know, I always say I'm a daughter of the desert. I need the sun, you know. So yeah,
especially after spending few years in India, I guess, of course, the light play a major role in your inspirations as well, and in your creativity, I guess, and the mental health is part of this process.
It's
so
a big
the
part
light,
of it. Yes, you need it because also, you know, 7 years in Montreal, this is the part that's very interesting, is we were there for 7 years, and now I think it's been 5 years since we moved back, and still my blood tests show low levels of vitamin D. You know, just 7 years, that's all it took for that kind of damage to be done, you know. So I take a very high dosage of vitamin D every day, 5,000, you know. Milligrams. So it's you know, it's not, the body is just not designed to live like that. And definitely the last few years I felt I had severe depression. I was just in the studio all the time. I didn't want to do anything else, and I would see maybe a couple of friends, but I just was immersed. I became very, very solitary. So it was not a healthy way to live.
Yeah, you Azam, from my knowledge, has decided to become an independent solo artist in 2002. Am I right here?
Yes.
You wanted to build you wanted to build this solo brand of Azam Ali.
Actually, it was never. I never planned that. Honestly, I love collaborating. It's a very particular kind of experience when you create with someone else or multiple people, because it pushes you to think differently, to react differently. Because when you're creating by yourself, you're very safe. You go to what's familiar. And it's through working with others that I have learned how to push myself beyond my comfort zone. And you know, it's a conversation. So somebody says something, and then you react to it. So I love collaboration, but the problem for me is that I have so many ideas and so much music that I love that's you know, falls into a wide spectrum of styles, that I have these ideas for projects and they don't really work within certain groups of people who I love to collaborate with. So that's why I started the solo career. It's mostly just to express aspects of my interests that I could not find a platform for otherwise. So Portals of Grace, the early music album I did, was the first album that was my first solo album, and that really was my thesis. Was I had such an interest in the music of this this era, and also the sort of influences of early European music and Arab music, and just this sort of, you're very familiar with.
Yeah,
So that,
because why I'm asking is because you had a great experiences working with legendary artists worldwide, including names just as Zakir Hussein and among others. And seems to me like there was a point in life where you decided to perhaps still doing all of these collaborations with the collective work, and of course, not to mention that you are still a member and co-founder and the main vocalist in the Niyaz band, which is again has a fantastic history and future ahead of it. So this combination between you as an independent solo artist and a collective always is a very tricky area to maneuver, if you see what I mean, as an artist. And that's why I brought this question, because I know how important it is to have that balance between you being part of a collective and independently as a solo artist.
Yes, actually, it's very challenging, and especially for our booking agents, it's a nightmare, because they they struggle how to separate, because I want the brands to be very clearly defined, because I don't want to take anything away from what Loga brings to Niyaz or what other members, it's such a democratic group, Niyaz is such a democratic platform that, and Sinan, there's Sinan, you're showing Sinan now.
Yes.
So it's important for me that the brand is separated, but it does become challenging because presenters get confused when they want to book, what am I booking here? Am I booking Niyaz? Am I booking Azam?
Yeah. That was very important.
Oh, you're just showing images. Okay.
Yeah. We decided to show some images from the live performances so people can have a sense of where have you been and which kind of collaborations you've done in the past. And with your permission, this is what we decided to show for our audience and viewers.
Of course, I'm happy.
That's
and also
great.
Niyaz has been through such a metamorphosis since the day we came to London, because when we came with our original founding member, Carmen Rizzo. He was with
Carmen
us.
Rizzo, yes, of course.
Yeah, and I think also at that time, Sinan was not playing with us. It was Nasser Musa, the Palestinian oud player. Wasn't he with us? Yeah, I think he was with us. Yeah. He's incredible. He's amazing.
Yes. All the artists you bring in Niyaz are exceptionally talented and absolutely fantastic. And I also remember one of your musicians on the Qanun, the Turkish Qanun player. She is also a stunning, amazing musician.
Yeah, we've been very lucky to have such virtuoso musicians join us, over the years. Yes, that's Didem Bashar from, she's from Turkey and she lives in Montreal. We met her in Montreal and she toured with us for a long time. So I think the time that you saw her with Niyaz, we were performing in south of France. Weren't we together in France?
It was in Babel Med in Marseille.
Yes. That was a great show. I remember your face after that show. You were
the last time I saw you live.
Sorry?
It was the last time I saw you live performing.
Yes. I think that may
Fingers
have also
crossed.
been. Oh no, I performed in France after that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that was really a great experience. I remember
yeah,
that.
definitely. Azam, I'm always interested in also this relationship between. Now you are squeezed between a husband who is a brilliant musician, Loga, and Iman. It seems to me like he's also a young, talented musician. This is amazing.
I
Can you tell us
know,
a
but
bit more about this
you
relationship?
well, Iman is. How can I describe him? I mean, without just glowing like any mother would, you know. I mean, he's a remarkable human being. I mean, anyone who meets Iman, they know this. He's such an old soul, you know. He's like an old school gentleman, you know. He's still like, we'll go for a walk and he picks me flowers. You know, he'll do things. He opens the
With
door
your
for me.
permission, we are showing him here live
Of
on the
course.
screen.
Of course. I mean, he's just this beautiful, gentle soul, and he's unlike any kid that I really know. You know, he's not into video games, not into, he loves to read, he plays cello all day long. And he's kind of in a different world, you know. Since we used to play this game when he was a baby, and it was the best game we ever played, which was we would sit in the car and we would just turn the radio dial, and every time I would tell him, every time you hear something you like, stop. And it was kind of because I was so worried that, you know, he would only get exposed to the music that I love, that he would miss out on discovering what it is that is calling to him. So that was kind of one of the ways that I found for him to be able to connect to what he resonates with, and always without fail he would stop on the classical music station. So
That's great. So
he's very
he plays the. Sorry.
he plays cello. So he's been playing cello now for a little over 4 years, and he is a hardcore classical music snob. It drives me crazy. You know, so you know
Yeah,
that mentality that it's the most superior form of music there is. But
that's great.
but he loves, thankfully he loves my music, and I think actually by the time we create the next show he will be ready to come on stage with us.
Wow. When that would be, do you think?
Well, we're working on it. We started it now, but it's going to take about 2 years, because the kind of show now, the multidisciplinary shows that we are creating, they're
Yes.
big productions and they involve several people. So it will probably take 2 years, you know, to
I'm
come
gonna
to
go back to this kind of performance because it's one of the highlights of what you do, Azam, because it's a it's part of the project. I feel musically, but visually and technically, it's very complex to put together this multimedia performances, and that's why you always very specific, and you choose very selective. You choose your venues very carefully for these type of projects. Can you tell us about this process as well, please?
So the multimedia show is a really unique show. I don't know if you're familiar or not, but one of the great things about Quebec, particularly in Canada, is there's a lot of investment in technology when it comes to the arts, and technology has always been a point of great interest for me, because like anything else that's man-made, a tool, it can be both destructive but incredibly creative at the same time. And I'm very much interested in this aspect of how technology is pretty much, even I don't care what kind of music you listen to, but technology is deeply integrated into our everyday life. So
Yes.
inevitably this is going to influence artistic expression. And I'm very much interested in this alchemy of technology and the human expression. So when we moved to Montreal, I think out of all the arts, the dance world, the modern dance world, is the most progressive in terms of experimenting with technology and sort of pushing the boundaries of art forward. So we started exploring. We knew we wanted to move in this direction, but nobody was doing what we were imagining we wanted to do. And then we started exploring the modern dance world, and we became familiar with the work of Jérôme de Lapierre. He's a French visual artist, but he lives in Montreal. And we just wrote to him and we said, can we meet with you? And it's such a small city, so we met for coffee. Sure. And we asked Jérôme, we said, look, you know, we're a live music group and we want to do basically what you're doing with the dance, but with a live music performance. So basically what it is it's a multi-level. It's not just visuals being projected behind the artists like you see in a lot of shows, you know. We call what we have built a digital scenography, and it works in multiple layers so that we have a very strong projector and there are some preset visuals. Yeah. But we also have an infrared camera, so it tracks the motion of whoever's on stage in real time, and it sends that information back to the camera. Sends the information back to it creates this sort of interaction between the visuals and sound. So everything is responding in real time to sound and movement. And this is the really interesting part of it. So we never know. Each show, it's something very organic that's happening. And that aspect is very interesting. So Jérôme had never done a live show like that. And he said, this is going to be incredible. Let's do it. I've never done a live music performance. So it was kind of an experiment for both of us. And we had this friend, a presenter, who gave us her theater for 10 days. She was going on holiday and she said, here's my keys to my theater. And we just locked ourselves in the theater for 1 week and we created The Fourth Light with Jérôme. You know, it was one of those miraculous artistic endeavors. And what came out of it was mind-blowing. And nothing like that had ever been done before. So it's kind of, and still nobody's doing what we're doing with the Fourth Light.
I just can't wait for all of these issues to be resolved with this world we live in, and to see one of these fantastic projects at some point live here in London.
I hope you can experience it, because you know it's so unique in the sense of it's a real synthesis between sound, movement, and light, and we combined all these disciplines of visuals, the sonic aspect, and then of course with Tanya, the whirling dervish, you know, the movement. So you have the synthesis, and what interests me is how can you bring the audience into the art? So, you know, there is always that voyeuristic aspect of a live performance where you sit as an audience member, and then there's what you are experiencing, the performance, and then there inevitably is this veil of separation. And I'm interested in how you can destroy that veil. And I think with this show, we accomplish that. And it's one of the things I hear all the time is from people who are very sort of, you know, they have their nose in the air and, you know, art snobs, and they come and they always say the same thing to me, is I came as a skeptic and I sat and I resisted to be taken in, and suddenly I found myself part of what was being created.
This is what you are passionate about, and it's the message that you wanted to deliver and to share that experience with your audience and your fans and the world. And I guess, you know, you invested a lot in these projects, Azam. I just hope, again, it will be live soon here in London and beyond. I hope so.
Yes, I hope so too. You know, when we were creating the show, this is a kind of funny story. Not funny, but I think it's an important story to share, because I like to always give people hope and inspiration, especially aspiring artists who sometimes feel that their dreams may be beyond their reach. But when we started creating the show, we thought it was going to be so easy to get grants from in Montreal because so much was being invested in this technology. But we got turned down one grant after another. Everybody kept saying, oh, this is impossible for a live music show. They didn't understand how this was going to work. So actually, Loga and I took the biggest risk we have ever taken in our life, and we took a loan out against our house.
Wow.
And
Gosh,
it cost
serious.
$40,000 to create the show, and we did it. We did it, and we decided to be poor for a little while. And I'll never forget when we debuted the show in Montreal 2 years after, and people had come, presenters had come from everywhere, and it was a massive success, you know. And when we came out, when it finished, I'll never forget, we both sat in the car and we looked at each other and we both started crying because it was sort of like the weight of
all of this emotion just exploded. Yeah.
We just jumped off a cliff, and we literally invested our life into what we were creating, and to have it be, to not fall, to be caught, you know, by the benevolence of the universe, you know, that it all came together. It was such a, it was an indescribable feeling, you know, that I could only cry out of a sense of relief. And now, you know, we keep trying to create the new show, but people keep booking this show, and it's already booked in 2022. So I'm wondering, when are we going to be able to debut the next show? Because everybody still wants to keep seeing the fourth light, you know.
Yeah. Respect, Azam. This is really interesting. Thank you for sharing this story. That's great. You always fascinating us with your activism as well, and your sense of solidarity. And recently, you stood in solidarity with Beirut and Lebanon after the explosion. So you contributed the original song of Fairuz, and you dedicated this beautiful song of Atini Naya wa Ghanni by the Khalil Gibran to the Lebanese people for Beirut. Could you please tell us a bit more, and then my colleague Aaron will slowly and gradually be able to share some of the sound with the audience as well.
Well, when these kind of events occur in the world, I feel that it is so important for artists to react and respond, because, you know, it's a privilege for me having a microphone in front of my mouth. I've always said that, and I take what I do with I believe there's such a great responsibility we carry as artists, and I believe that given the life experiences that I've had and the challenges I've faced, it's sort of I feel a sense of duty to stand up for human rights, for you know, to kind of stand in solidarity with anyone experiencing injustice or any form of suffering or tragedy. So over the years, you know, no matter what it is, when something happens somewhere in the world that is close to my heart, I try to create some kind of a tribute. So after Beirut, I mean, that was heart-wrenching what happened. And this song of Fairuz is my favorite. It's been one of my favorites. And for years, all my Arab friends used to tell me, Nasser used to tell me that I should sing this song, because he said it's perfect for your voice. But there was never really an opportunity or a platform. And when this happened, I felt this is the perfect moment to sing this song and to pay tribute.
We're gonna listen to some of this, Azam.
Yes, and that's Sinan Cem Erolu on guitar.
That's right, yeah. We're gonna just listen with the volume now. Thank you.
اتخذت الغابة مثلي منزلا دون القصور فتتبعت السواقي وتسلقت الصخور هل تحممت بعطر وتنشفت بنور هل تحممت بعطر وتنشفت بنور وشربت الفجر خمرا في كؤوس من
That's beautiful, Azam. It's very sensitive and delicate song as well. It's
Yeah,
you sing from your heart.
that's the only way to sing. Otherwise, it's better not to sing.
Sure.
And it's always difficult to sing in a language you don't speak because you wonder how can I put my heart into something. So one of the ways that I have always done it over the years, especially when I sing in Arabic or Turkish or Kurdish or a lot of the sort of languages I don't speak, is I have to internalize it. So I'll never look at lyrics. I have to memorize it and know the meaning, and then I live with it for months until I feel that it becomes mine, you know. And then you put your heart into it and you hope that that vibration will reach others. Yes.
That's great. Azam, I'm looking on my producer side, and I can see lots of questions are
I know, I
emerging
see.
from the audience. So I hope you don't mind. We'll take few of these questions,
Yes.
and
Yes, of course.
I'm gonna go with the first one. How do you how you see yourself as a musician or a sound crafter? Further, how your music might be classified? And this is from Ambience.
Well, I think that now for 20 years, one of the things I've made clear is I don't like my music to be classified. I think, you know, it's the creation of Niyaz in and of itself was about that. It was about breaking a mold, and we pioneered a new sound that defied categorization, and I hope I continue to do that. I do describe myself as a sonic architect. You know, I never plan the style of song I'm going to write. It's a very organic process for me. I go in and it's all stream of consciousness. The way I think when I create is I imagine, it's a very three-dimensional experience. When I go into the studio to work, I imagine I'm in an empty room. There's nothing in this room, but it's a space. It's a space, and I can feel the space. And then I start placing things in this room. I place an object here, an object there, and then it starts to take shape. And then the room tells me what it wants to be. So music for me is this kind of a process. It tells me what it wants to be. I never, almost, it's different when I'm doing a song like the Feyruz song, and it's a sort of cerebral choice. Okay, I'm going to do this. But in terms of my own creativity, it's quite organic and you know, sort of, it's very stream of consciousness. So I don't even think about style, and I hope I will always continue to defy styles of music, you know. But I think in general, it's always very cinematic. It's very visual music, so you will inevitably see colors or images, I think, when you listen to my music.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Azam. We're gonna move to the next question. What are some of the upcoming collaborations you are planning?
Wow, I have so many projects I'm doing right now.
Give us an example.
Yes. Okay, so we are creating the next multimedia show, which is going to be technologically even more advanced than this one. Then we are doing, right now we are composing music for, there's a wonderful artist and director, Iranian, Hamid Rahmanian, in New York. He's based in New York, and he created an amazing show called Feathers of Fire, which we composed the music for, Loga and I did. And it's basically the largest shadow theater ever been created. And it was very successful, that show. And it's based on the Shahnameh, the Iranian Shahnameh. So we are composing the music for his second show now that he's creating. It's called Song of the North. And we've been working on that pretty much throughout the pandemic. And that should be done, I would say, in about 3 or 4 months. And then there's another very exciting project, which I can't say too much about, but it's going to take place in Vancouver. And we are composing the music for this really amazing show that's going to take place in a dome. And this is going to travel as well.
That's
So
great.
besides that, I'm always collaborating. People send, there are so many things going on. I'm also working on an album with a very famous British producer who has produced probably most of my favorite albums since I was a teenager. And we are working on an album together, which should be out this year. So I have a lot of projects on my plate
So
right
we
now.
will wait for all of these surprises to emerge.
Yes,
Surely audience and fans will be delighted to find out more in the next few months or so. I would like to take one more question, if I may, and that is number 3. And it says, being affected by multiculturalism, do you think of having a project with folk music by cultures you haven't come in contact with yet?
Did
Did
I
you get?
understand? Oh, do they mean that would I be interested in working on folk
Yeah,
music of cultures that I
right.
am not?
Yes, it seems like this is the way it's going. Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. I love folk music, and it's probably the music I am most intrigued by. I've always been since I was very young, because it tells the story of people, and I'm interested in the story of people. So I'm very much interested in this. Whether or not I would fall into a category that we would have to dedicate a whole other hour, and it's actually one of the workshops that I hold, which would be about the appropriation of another culture, and
Yeah.
and this is a very, very difficult subject to kind of cover in a very short period of time. It's very nuanced and complex. But to answer the short story in a short way, no, I don't think I could or would have an interest in performing music of cultures that are not directly part of my lived experience. I don't think I could do them justice. So I sort of just stay focused on music from the Persian Gulf, and then of course the Indian subcontinent, because these are regions that I am connected to, and it's part of the thread of my sort of it's part of the thread of where I come from, and and my history. So I will always remain focused on that, and particularly on the ethnic and religious minority groups who have suffered persecution. That's my area of interest in terms of folkloric music. Because that is it. It's about the sort of shining a light on these minority groups that have suffered under dominant culture. Yeah.
Adding to this, adding to this part of the conversation, I guess it is normal to take all of these influences from where you've been born in Iran, and then the neighboring demographic and socio-political influences that you took to India, and then this Persian music, it was rooted anyway in the Indian music. At some point, there is lots of emerging cultures together between the two, and then you went and took it to the state and to Canada, and you toured with it with Niaz, and there is always some influences by having all of these guest artists from different backgrounds and different cultures. So I guess you live that fabric, if you like, of all of these threads of the music journeys that you survived and you lived, and you're still producing it.
Well, it really interests me, this subject, and over the years I've been very lucky to work with some of the best musicians from all these areas that we have performed the music of, like Nasser from Palestine, and then Sinan, who is Kurdish and Alawi,
Yeah.
and then Dam, who's Turkish, and then all the Indian musicians that we've had over the years. And they bring their, it's important for me that their voice is included in these, in the music that we are presenting, Otherwise, there's an inauthenticity about it, and in many ways, I think if I didn't include their voices, I think I would be perpetuating a kind of Orientalism that I myself am very much against, So it's bringing their voices to.
I'm just gonna alert our audience also to the last point you've just mentioned here, Azam, which is you sacrificed everything, and you put behind all of the labels and record labels, and you took this risk by declaring yourself as an independent artist as well. And this take lots of courage and investment. Yeah. And it is important that we share this with the audience as well, so they know the other side of you, if you like, when it comes to the business and the music industry.
Well, I think if you're going to be a musician in 2021, you have to understand the business side of it. You cannot. I think the days that when I started in this business, it was in the 90s, and I was very young, and I had the luxury of I could just be an artist, and I didn't need to know much about the business side. There were record companies and lawyers who did that. And then when the model collapsed, the industry collapsed, that luxury just was no longer there. And I learned the business. And this is what I tell when I speak with younger aspiring artists who write to me. I say,
yes,
now
because we have a question here. It's good that you mentioned this in reply to the question.
Now it's only 50% of it is your talent. The other 50 is how you understand the way it works, and you're fighting against a system that is built to rob you of any sort of reward, financial reward. So you have to understand how this business works. So I tell people, I'm sorry, I should have done that. Turn my phone off. So yes, and now record companies are really not necessary anymore, unless you're a big pop artist or a rock artist, unless you're a mainstream artist in some form. Maybe it's still relevant, but for any sort of independent artist, you just have to learn how there's so many creative ways you can bring your music directly to your audience. Absolutely. That you can bypass this this middleman, so to speak, but you have to learn. There is no way around it. You have to understand how it works. And it takes tremendous courage. It takes tremendous courage. And when I say it takes tremendous courage, it's important to iterate that it doesn't mean there's an absence of fear. It means that there's actually a lot of fear, but despite the fear, you act. And and this is what the important message I like to give to other artists is that it's very scary, but once you do it, there is a liberation beyond that is so rewarding, because now you have this very intimate relationship with your audience, those who are being directly touched by what
It's
you are
very
creating.
close relationship
You
now.
know?
It's not longer like before.
Exactly. You know.
Right. I'm gonna have one more question with your permission.
As many as you want. I'm still having coffee. It's getting later
Right.
for you, not
How,
for me.
how do you compose, and what instrument do you have in mind mostly as the bass line? The bass line, sorry.
As the bass line when I write,
Yeah.
the way that if I'm producing music myself alone, for me, everything is rhythm. So the heartbeat. I first begin with a heartbeat. So I try to choose. I don't even choose the key. I choose. First, I choose a tempo. So I'll bring up a click, and I'll see how my heart is beating that day. You know, it changes. So I try to feel where I'm at, and it's amazing. You know, when you just listen to a tempo, the body naturally will tell you where it wants to be at that given moment. So I choose my tempo, and then I begin with, I have many different softwares that I love to use, but for bass line, but for bass, I love to use Trillion. I don't know if the person asking this question is a producer or not, but I use Trillion because they have my favorite bass sounds. So I'll begin with Trillion, and then I create then the kick and all the other instruments around it. So then I first create the groove, and then while I'm creating the groove, which I call the heartbeat of the music, then the tone starts to become clear for me of where I want it to go. And then I begin to add the melodic aspects. So that's kind of mostly how I work.
This is how the process takes place.
Yes, unless I have sometimes very clear vocal melody, you know, I'm in the kitchen or I'm doing something very mundane, and then I hear something, and then I just rush to the studio and I have to put it down. So that happens as well, but mostly it's the other way around.
That's great. Azam, also there is one more question here, which is, what inspired you to work on your interpretation of Hildegard von Bingen? Yeah, sorry, my accent is not great here. Will you introduce different songs too?
Actually, I know, Aser, you're a Christian Palestinian. Are you not familiar with Hildegard von Bingen's music?
No, no, I'm not. But in fact, I just want to correct you. Actually, I am not a Christian Palestinian.
Oh, you're not? I always thought you were Christian.
No, I'm a Muslim Palestinian, but it doesn't make any difference. All Palestinians are the same nation, whether they are Muslims or Christians. But it's maybe it's because I am an activist when it comes to the harmony between all religions, and I always felt that Christianity is part of the collective of the Palestinian society. I defend their existence and their coexistence with their fellow Muslim Palestinians, and that's why maybe you thought I sometimes share some of these posts or some of these topics that I like to bring in. Interestingly, as you know, in the last 4 or 5 years, I produced and curated a series in London called Arab Christmas, and the reason behind that is to revive all of these ancient Christian chants from the Arab world and from Palestine in particular. So it's a reminder that we are one nation, whether we are Muslims or Christians. But anyway, so back to the question.
So I apologize for that mix-up, but I know you're not. I know you're not religious anyway. You're not a practicing. You're not a very religious man. But yes, I always assumed, I appreciate that you always tell that story, because this is one conversation. You know, I worked for so many years with Nasser and also another very famous Christian Palestinian artist, the violinist. So you know that I have a long history with that, and it's one of the things I always told Nasser that he should, because he's so well known, and
Yeah.
I always wanted to make a video about his life story because it's so interesting, and most people don't know about the Christian history in Palestine.
That
And
is the thing that we have an obligation and
yes,
a moral responsibility to
yes.
bring
So his
all these
yes.
stories and pair it together.
Yeah, I wish I could have created. I still would like to tell his story because it's a very interesting story of how, you know, what they left as Christians and how, you know, what happened. So anyway, now to
Yeah.
back to the Hildegard question.
Yes, please.
So,
Yes.
Yes, I became very much interested in early music as a teenager, and I first heard her music on the radio. And when I first heard it, it did something to my body. It was like that music, you know, I feel a lot of times when I hear certain music or any kind of, or I read poetry, this happens to me when I read poetry, it's almost like a memory gets awakened inside me. It's there already. I don't feel that something from outside is happening to me. I feel
Yeah.
that's a memory from inside is being awakened. And that happened to me when I heard Hildegard von Bingen's music. So I remember I rushed immediately to the store and bought several CDs. And I came home and I taught myself how to sing by listening to her music, actually.
Yeah.
And this was before I got professional singing lessons. I taught myself how to sing through those songs. And that's how I became interested in her music. And eventually when I learned how to sing professionally, I felt that the first solo album I do really should be a tribute to the music that introduced me to my own voice in many ways. You know, it was the awakening of my voice. The awakening of my voice happened through her music. So that's why I did my first album around her. Yeah.
Azam, you know, time is unbelievably taking us by surprise as always. You know, it's never enough 1 hour for these conversations, as you know. But
Yes.
I definitely should have, you know, think about a different way of engaging you in a different conversation at some point with a longer maybe time scale, so we can allow lots of the audience to through these interesting and fascinating questions. And we are sorry that we can't take all the questions, unfortunately, today. However, please bear with us for the next edition. Hopefully we can catch up again with Azam once this pandemic is over, and maybe we can be sitting in one room together in a studio where we can have this conversation coming.
I hope so. I hope so. But I think that the questions will be on the thread, yes?
Yeah. That's right.
So maybe later when I'm having a glass of wine, I will go and respond to some of them because I appreciate everyone who wrote, to everyone who has tuned in to listen.
Yeah, and we are grateful for all of these people who tuned in and watched us and supported Arts Canteen in Conversation on 8th episode today. And I'm grateful also to Loga, who sorted the technical issue earlier with this.
And my neighbors.
And your neighbors, of course.
My neighbors, yeah.
And all the neighborhood in Los Angeles who's looking after Azam Ali. That's great. Thank you so much.
I have really good neighbors, and I'm very close friends with all of them. Actually, on my left side is a family from Jordan. I'm very close friends with them. And then here, the house I came to now, they're American. They're really lovely people. So
and all our best wishes from London, Azam. And
thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to
Thank you. Thank
see
you,
you.
Azam. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for all of your time today, and we are grateful to you.
Thank you.
All of the social media of Azam Ali and where you can follow her are there on the bottom of the screen. But thank you, everyone who joined us tonight. And thanks
Yes.
again to the producer and my colleague, both Aaron and Rebal. Azam Ali, greetings to the family. Thank you so much again. And hopefully, we'll see you
Shukran.
again
Thank you
in
so
London.
much.
All the best.
Inshallah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
This show